The advantages of multi-constellation are that you'll have many more satellites available to you for your position solution, which means that you won't suffer from poor availability. In addition, the fact that there are multiple constellations from different states means that it's much more acceptable to different nations that they're not relying on just the signals coming from one nation or a different nation, but instead it's truly a multinational solution. But there's some concerns over multi-constellation as well, because the use of many different types of signals following different standards means that the receiver is much more complicated, and there's a lot more work and effort to create an aviation receiver for that. In addition, we don't yet have standards for all of the satellites, and so it will take a while for states to publish those standards and to incorporate that in and create the aviation receivers. But the advantages far outweigh those negatives, because the vast number of satellites means that you'll have very high availability, even for more demanding performances than we achieve right now. The benefits of the WAAS ground system using L1 and L5 instead of L1 and L2 are that it now has a strong coded signal. So it's both a more powerful signal, and the full details of the signal are known in full, so you're not using a semi-codeless technique, which means that we can do more reliable tracking of the signal, and that's helpful for tracking low elevation satellites and in areas that have scintillation. But the disadvantages are that we have to change out both the ground hardware and the software, and so there's potentially quite a bit of costs and time associated with that. In addition, we've discovered that it would be a fairly expensive proposition to process all three signals, L1, L2, and L5 at the same time. So WAAS will switch from L1 and L2 to L1 and L5, and when it does that, we'll lose access to the older satellites that are only L1 and L2 capable. So initially, we may have fewer satellites available to us, but certainly in the long run, switching to L1 and L5 will provide an improvement for WAAS and its ground system. GPS is not as well suited to high latitude regions. The satellites themselves only go up to 55 degrees north latitude, and so as the user goes above that latitude, they no longer have satellites overhead, and so they suffer worse vertical performance. However, the horizontal performance is actually better, because there are more satellites. They can see typically more satellites at high latitudes than you see at mid-latitude, and the satellites are better distributed. So actually horizontal performance is already better in high latitude areas. But the vertical performance definitely suffers, and therefore the user will not get the same vertical resolution. But they could augment with a barrel altimeter, or they could add a laser altimeter with a terrain database, and that would give them more information in the vertical dimension. Or many users in that region, if they're maritime or they're land, they could just access the terrain database and already solve for their vertical positioning. Another problem that you may have is that the geostationary satellites aren't received up above 75 north, and so you can switch instead to either getting data through the internet, or we can use inclined geostationary satellites such as QZSS, which has orbits that go up higher, and in that way you can then receive S-band signals up in those high latitudes as well.